The Mark Dolan Show on TalkRADIO. Harwood's headline.
In the company of Tom Harwood, writer at Guido Fawkes. Always unmissable stuff. Hello, Tom.
Hi.
And we hear from the Prime Minister at 8 o'clock. Here we go again.
It does seem like we're sort of living a bit of a Groundhog Day at the moment, doesn't it? We've lived through so many of these new announcements, repeated stay-at-home orders, and to be honest, not that much will change for the 75% of the country that's living under Tier 4, which is basically November lockdown conditions anyway. But this did seem inevitable, looking at those shooting up graphs that show this new variant of COVID is just rapidly tearing through the country, and it seems to be spreading amongst young people more. So I think we're going to be hearing more about schools later on as well. It's been peculiar watching the front benches of both sides in Parliament, both the Tories and the Labour Party, sort of equivocate over this issue, as their backbenchers over the last 3 or 4 days have really been piling on the pressure. But it does seem like we're finally getting a decision tonight.
Indeed so, and really what feels like another U-turn from the government in regard to schools as well.
Oh, certainly. I mean, the biggest thing of the government has throughout the pandemic being saying that schools are vital for development, for education, and of course they are. And the government has really tried to keep them open. It does seem like this was a decision that did become inevitable as soon as we knew about this new variant, though. And really, we've been seeing these feet dragged, and we'll be in the peculiar situation where some children have been back to school today and potentially won't be going back tomorrow, which does seem like it's a bit of an odd time to make that decision. If the government had made it yesterday, they could have made a lot of people's lives a lot easier.
I've been deeply concerned about the impact of lockdowns. I know you have too, Tom. I took a call earlier from Mick in Cambridge. He's got 5 children. He's a professional chauffeur, and news of further restrictions are devastating for him and his family. And he spoke with such emotion and courage on this show just a few minutes ago. However, I do feel that the lockdown skeptics are now starting to lose this battle, losing the war. That's the question in today's text poll. Have the lockdown skeptics lost the war? What's your view?
My view is that to some extent, yes, they have, but this isn't necessarily the same way that this could have been lost in the summer. There's something that fundamentally changed that meant the equation changed, and the dynamics within Parliament changed. You started to see a big movement of something called the COVID research, the COVID recovery group. On the Tory backbenches. That has changed its position somewhat with regard to being incredibly agitated about getting this vaccine out as soon as possible. As soon as we had safe and efficacious vaccines, the equation changed. And I think that everyone on all sides of this debate can now get behind the idea that we need to get this vaccine out and vaccinate the vulnerable people as quickly as possible. The COVID recovery group today has set government a challenge of doing that in 7 weeks. And if we can get, that's 2 million doses done a week, that all of the vulnerable people will be covered in 7 weeks, and then we can start repealing these restrictions. That's the challenge placed on government today.
Oh, that is the holy grail. And therefore, if that were to go according to plan, a big if, of course, Tom, then the easing of restrictions into March.
Absolutely, but this is the current government target of 2 million a week. Proportionally, that's far less than Israel is doing already. It seems that the government has been a bit slow on this. I heard today that the production of the Oxford vaccine going on in Wales is only happening from Monday to Friday. They're not even doing 7-day production. There's a lot of things that can change to speed up the application, whether it's 24-hour application of vaccines. I would very happily turn up at 3 a.m. to a football stadium to get a jab in my arm. I'm sure that many other people would as well. There's so much more that can be being done, and obviously a lockdown at the moment, just to the Exchequer, ignoring all of the wider externalities, costs £1 billion a day to this country, to the Exchequer. So if we spend anything less than £1 billion a day, we'll actually be saving money on this vaccine rollout. We need to cut this lockdown as short as possible and get these vaccines out as quickly as possible.
Couldn't agree more. Brilliant stuff as always. Tom returns in a week's time with more Harwood's headline. Harwood, thank you, Tom. Harwood, I've got a very public school there. Harwood. Thank you, Tom. Fantastic stuff. Writer, of course, at Guido Fawkes.